we are going to talk about the U.S.-backed group and its aid distribution that started and basically was a spectacular failure. Here's Dylan Saba saying, U.S. hunger plan, this is our genocide. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The U.S. is as responsible for the Gaza genocide as Israel was for the Sabra and Shatila massacres. Abso-freaking-lutely. Abso-freaking-lutely. Dylan is 100% correct. You might have seen some of the images on the timeline earlier if you're on Twitter or if you're on, I don't know, freaking Blue Sky or whatever you're on. But Drop Site News covered it extensively as well. I'm going to obviously talk about that. Here is my take on it, at least. Mohammed Shahada, thousands of starved Gazans stormed the dystopian Israeli-American aid complex in Rafah after being forced to stand in endless queues and bake in the sun in a fenced concentration camp while being subjected to biometric surveillance. U.S. mercenaries and Israeli troops are opening fire. Israel's Khan reports U.S. mercenaries were likely the ones opening fire at the starved crowds, while reports from Gaza indicate Israeli troops also fired at the crowds. People were told to stand in queue all day while the mercenaries pick and choose who gets aid and who starves. This comes a day after two key figures that were a part of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the GHF, a philanthropic NGO that is directly backed by the Israeli government and directly backed by the American government and American State Department officials, that was based out of Switzerland. Like the two key figures that actually resigned, including the main guy, Jake Wood, Marine sniper turned mercenary, U.S. mercenary, said, this plan ain't gonna work. It's a bridge too far for me. He had resigned a day prior. Now, of course, I said it didn't take 100 years to get back to this stage of fascism, as you can see right here. Identical, literally identical, almost one-to-one comparison. What are we doing? What the hell is going on? How do people not see this? How? Instead of allowing aid to be let into the strip, we are doing this. Incredible. Israel's Khan reports the U.S. mercenaries were likely the ones opening fire. Israel's Channel 12 highlights and reports that an Israeli helicopter began firing at the starved crowd while the American mercenaries ran away. Palestinian report, chaos in the center of the division. Thousands of Gazans broke into the humanitarian aid complex. As the new aid distribution plan in Gaza Strip was launched, it was reported that the Palestinian mob broke through the fences of the compound in Tel Al-Sultan and attacked the humanitarian equipment. It was also reported that IDF helicopters opened fire and at the American company's employees withdrew from the scene. At this stage, there is no verification of the claim. Thousands of Gazans have already arrived to receive food packages, some of them Israeli made. That's the other side of the story, by the way. Never let a crisis go to waste. You know who gets to make money off of this genocide? Israeli companies. That's right. Like, we're spending money here in America to fundraise, and then these initiatives are going, they have to go through Israel. No other way to let aid in, okay? And the food is still coming from Israeli producers. Thousands of Gazans have already arrived to receive food packages, some of them Israeli made. Hamas has also begun distributing free food in order to sabotage the distribution. Hamas has begun distributing free food in order to sabotage the distribution. Villain. Gaza is the 2025 version of a concentration camp. Tens of thousands starved for 86 days. Then came aid, a chaotic, humiliating spectacle wrapped in barbed wire and guarded by American mercs. Even they fled when desperation breached the fence. This is also part of the reason why you can't have sterile zones where aid distribution is happening in one area. You can't package millions of people into 25% of the strip when Gaza already, before October 7, was an open-air prison that was one of the most densely populated areas on the planet. And then having that densely populated area and all of the population that has been starved get forced into two specific aid zones is ridiculous. There is a reason why the United Nations was like, we don't want anything to do with this. This is ridiculous. Y'all are insane. They are making a smaller concentration camp inside of a concentration camp. Thousands of people starving for months, crammed together and treated inhumanely. And do watch the American mercenary perched on high, waving like he's at a concert. The image is truly dystopian mix of cruelty and performance, unbelievable but fully intentional. It is ridiculous. Utterly depraved. This wasn't humanitarian relief. It was a military-backed PR stunt. No system. 15-kilometer walks. Yeah, that's the other side of this. They made them walk 15 kilometers. Zero transport. Detainees mid-distribution. One food parcel lasts 2 days. This is an aid. It's humiliation designed solely for optics, not survival. This is damning. It confirms what everyone already knows. This isn't humanitarian aid. It's humiliation theater, a staged performance to tick boxes, claim success, and justify continued siege, all under military protection. The Geneva Conventions obviously prohibit perfidy, a war crime that includes combatants impersonating aid workers. In Rafah, American mercenaries posed as humanitarians, luring starving civilians into a military control zone with no real aid system. It is a war crime. They made Palestinians, after bombing them, bombing their homes, and then bombing their tents, they made those Palestinians walk 15 kilometers, okay, 7.5 miles to get to this area where aid was distributed, aid in air quotes, was distributed by the very same factions that are bombing them. And in the process of quote unquote aid distribution, after starving them for 9 miles, after starving them for 86 days, they started detaining people on the line. And of course, predictably, chaos broke out. Like, I've been covering the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation since we found out that this was the plan, talking about exactly what was going to happen. Okay. Talking about exactly what was going to happen. That what happened here is a more restrained version of what should have most likely happened. It is crazy. If the photos coming out of Gaza of Palestinians crammed into cages to get scraps and crumbs of food don't remind you of the Holocaust, that's because you haven't seen very many photos of the Nazi genocide during World War II. It is quite literally a one-to-one. As the Israeli aid scheme staffed by U.S. mercenaries begins in Gaza, there's already a report of a Palestinian being kidnapped when he went to get one of the small boxes of food. His family says he went to the Muraj Crossing Aid Distribution Center. To our shock, he called us under threat from Israeli intelligence officers demanding information about one of our relatives with whom we've had no contact since the beginning of the war. When we were unable to provide the information the army requested, communication was cut off, and we were later informed that he was transferred to a detention center. He is now considered missing. Every single person in Gaza is treated like an enemy combatant. Every single one. Okay. The Israeli military does not make an exception between like civilians. The Israeli military certainly does not make an exception for people who are even like politically involved with the civil governance and civil affairs. They are actively targeting people who are responsible for trash collection or responsible for policing, responsible for, like, they're killing the agriculture ministers and stuff, and then saying we killed another high profile Hamas target. Okay. They're killing journalists and then saying, well, this person was photographed next to Yahya Sinwar. So obviously he is also Hamas. They're killing children, and they're not even hiding it. They're openly doing it in display of the rest of the planet. And understandably, this has created a lot of resentment towards Israel. Israel has become a pariah state in even the Western world. It was already a pariah state for the global South. Now, even Western countries, the populations of Western countries see this horrifying picture, okay? And they also develop unimaginable resentment, understandable resentment, because Israel. Who wouldn't resent this? Oh, here, there's also this. UN experts express alarm at 2 new Israeli terrorism laws that permit life imprisonment for 12-year-olds and arbitrary suspension of child welfare payments, violating the human rights of Palestinian children. I mean, they already have a process where, like, if someone has done like a knife attack or something in the West Bank, okay, against a member of the Israeli military, or even like a citizen, civilian, settler, whatever, right? They will go back and they will destroy the homes. They will literally displace the entire family of the person that engaged. Like, they already do collective punishment with regular frequency, okay? Which is, again, demonic. It's insane. Instead of like prosecuting the individual, which, by the way, ironically enough, the Palestinians have a right to resist in the West Bank, resist to the illegal occupation of the West Bank, for the record. But even within this like insane legal structure that they've designed for themselves with military tribunals and whatnot, the very fact that they punish the entire lineage is psychotic. And now, on top of that, they've pushed this new law through where 12-year-olds can get life imprisonment. 12-year-olds. Only democracy in the Middle East.
Already seen its own executive director resign in protest amid mounting concerns over the project. The foundation says it delivered truckloads of food to its secure sites on Monday, where distribution began to people in Gaza, although it isn't saying how many trucks were involved. The project has been controversial, seen by critics as politicising and militarising aid and using food distribution to cattle Palestinians into diminishingly smaller areas, with selective distribution used to starve out Israel's adversaries. The foundation rejects the criticism, saying its operations conform to the humanitarian principle of neutrality. Let's go live now to our Middle East correspondent.
No, it doesn't. No, it does not. Aid to civilians in a theater of war cannot be given by enemy combatants. It cannot have any military use. It is illegal. That is literally illegal. Okay? The idea that you can use aid for military purpose is insane. But so is doing a genocide. Obviously, it is the worst crime that a state can commit. There is no crime worse than ethnic cleansing.
Now, the UN and most UN agencies that have been working on the Gaza humanitarian crisis have been refusing to work with this newly created foundation. They see it as both unethical and unworkable, and they've accused Israel of using food as a weapon and also using it as bait to try to fit in with the military strategy of forcing Palestinians in Gaza to move to the south. And, you know, it's not clear at the moment whether this will be effective. Israel says that a new system is urgently needed to stop Hamas from stealing supplies for its own benefit. And that's something that the UN has said is not happening in a meaningful way. At the same time, we've been hearing from the UN's humanitarian office some figures suggesting that despite Israel's easing of the blockade, the total blockade imposed on Gaza for 11 weeks, saying this was to pressure Hamas.
Also today, the occupation announced a seizure of approximately 7 million shekels in cash and the confiscation of gold worth 6.2 million shekels were seized, and 30 citizens were arrested during a raid on exchange and gold shops today in the West Bank. Dude, again, Nazi shit. They're robbing the Palestinians blind with the limited means that the Palestinians already have in occupied territory. They're stealing their clothes. They're wearing their clothes. They're wearing the clothes of the women in the homes that they have displaced the Palestinians from.
Of lorries being allowed to return back to Gaza is about 190 lorry loads, mainly of food, going in. And we're hearing, of course, that distribution is very difficult with people just so desperate on the ground.
And Yolande, in the meantime,
it's just such a freak, dude. It is especially freak-like when, like, so close in your history do you have immediate relatives that were victim to this exact same design, like one-to-one, verbatim, identical design in the Holocaust. To turn around and do it not 100 years after is psychotic. But then again, 1948 was immediately after World War II, was immediately after the Holocaust. The practice of destroying the houses of an attacker's family in the West Bank is so judicially infamous because it was challenged in the Supreme Court by Palestinian rights organizations. After all, the practice was only applied to Palestinians and never to Jewish murders. Judge Solberg, a far-right settler on the court, wrote in the majority opinion, "It is permissible to expect ethnic enforcement because Jews don't need the deterrence." More so that, yeah, we don't want to deter the Jews from doing it. We only want the Palestinians to get this, like, extraordinary deterrence measure. This is why people say the Nakba never ended, by the way. I mean, this is like 1948. This is the exact same. It has never stopped. It is also being reported the main picture going around with men carrying boxes are surprisingly linked to the criminal Yasser Abu Shabab gang. You in the chat may remember me bringing them up multiple times because they're the same gang that has been working with the occupation to steal aid. I know I covered that extensively yesterday when I was talking about, like, Israel's depraved starvation techniques and Israel's deliberate attempts of destabilizing aid delivery at the point of delivery as well. They have ISIS affiliate criminal gangs in the Gaza Strip, literally protected by Israeli drones, go up to aid distribution and cause chaos with weapons that they got from the Israeli occupying force, with gear that they're wearing from the Israeli occupying force. The Israeli occupying force is allowing an ISIS affiliate gang leader to literally harass truck drivers and extort them after they enter the Gaza Strip in areas that are red zones, where if you are a Palestinian, Israel automatically kills you, except for these ISIS affiliates that are allowed to operate in those red zones. With the exception of these ISIS affiliates, no Palestinian is allowed to enter these red zones. Otherwise, they will get lasered by an Israeli drone. It is shocking.